Are you interested in running Sitecore in a composition of Docker containers, but need a bit of direction in getting started? I'm Davin Edelamaki. This video is the first installment in an ongoing series that does just that. If you're following along at home, you'll need to have Docker for Windows installed and the text editor of your choice. I'll be using Visual Studio Code since it works well, is free, and has all the features we will need. In this video, we will cover setting up our Solr container. Building a Docker container in Solr is fairly straightforward. There are three main parts to it: installing Java, setting up Solr, and adding some cores. We'll get started by creating an empty Docker file and opening it in our editor. I'm going to do this in editor so I can share the source on GitHub. You can find a link in the video description. I've also taken the time to write out everything in advance because, as it turns out, I'm terrible at talking while I type. All right, let's switch the screen here. Open editor, switch it to where you can see it, and we'll get started. Now the first thing we'll do is add our base image to the file. I'm using Microsoft / Windows Server Core since it's about the simplest Windows Server image you can get right now. And next we will instruct PowerShell to stop at any errors. This is mostly to prevent us from wasting time if the build fails at any point. And then we will start by installing Java by creating a web client and downloading the installer from Oracle. Once we have the file downloaded, we can run the installer using the start process PowerShell commandlet and passing in the arguments, I should say, /s for silent install, installdir for where we will install, and /l for where the install log will be placed. We'll delete the installer just to clean up the image a bit and make sure also that our Java home and path variables are set. It is important to note that when setting the path variable, we need to escape the semicolon with the backtick. Otherwise, it will not execute successfully. And at this point, it's probably not a terrible idea to build our container and see if we have Java installed correctly. I always run this in PowerShell, but it can be done in command prompt. A shortcut while in the folder, you can hold Alt, click F, S, and R to open PowerShell. Or you can hold Alt and click F, S, then A to open PowerShell as an admin. The reason I open PowerShell The reason I open PowerShell from the folder that contains the Docker file is that it is much simpler to build a Docker image from the context of the Docker file. If you open command prompt for PowerShell elsewhere, be sure to navigate to the directory that contains the Docker file. We're now going to build the image using the docker build command. I'm going to tag this image as Solr so it's easier to reference later. And of course, you gotta make sure you're actually in the folder of the Docker file. I should follow my own advice. Now, the first time you run a build, it could take a few minutes since Docker does not have the steps cached. Obviously, my steps are cached since I have tested this build previously. Once the container builds successfully, we can run it with the docker run command, passing in -it to run an interactive session and a name to make finding the container a little easier later. And I already had the container running from my previous test, so let's try that again. It will take a few seconds to spin up an image every time, because it is actually firing up applications in the background. So got a little bit to wait here. Okay, now that it's up, we just type in java-version, and we will see the version of Java that is installed, hopefully. Yep, there we go. Now we can go back to our editor, and we will go on to the next step. Now that we see that we have Java up and running, we can get on to setting up Solr. As we did with Java, we will download Solr using the web client. This time though, once the download is complete, we'll expand the archive and then delete it as cleanup. For the interest of time, again, I have this pre-typed up. And now that we have Solr expanded, we can build a batch file that will be used to set up our service. We do this simply by creating a file called solrstart.bat and inputting we're going to create a file called solrstart.bat that runs solr.command in the foreground on port 8983. Very simple. And then we set up the service by downloading NSSM, extracting the package, and running the install command. Of course, we also need to make sure to expose port 8983 of the container so we can browse our Solr instance. And now, with all this, we can go back and build this Docker image. And actually, this time I'm going to run Docker with a couple extra commands. I'm going to run it in detached mode with 2 gigabytes of memory because Solr and Java really don't like the dynamic nature of Docker, so you need to actually assign memory, otherwise Solr tends to get out of memory exceptions. We're going to again name this Solr, and then we're going to give it a host name with Solr as well, so we can navigate it in the browser without having to type in the IP. And of course, we got to put in the name of our image. Once this is up, I will navigate in the browser, and we will see if we can pull up the admin panel. And we get that awkward moment of silence or break while we wait for that. Okay, here we go. And we will go Solr: 8983, enter. And there we go. We have our admin panel. As we can see, there's currently no cores. Dashboard's pretty basic. It has our 2 gig plus of memory. So we will minimize that for now, and we'll go on to the next step of adding our cores, which I'm going to assume you already know how to create cores in Solr, because, well, hopefully if you're trying to put them in Docker, you already know that part. So I'm going to use cores that I've actually already created, and we're just going to simply use the command in the Docker file called add, and pull them from a folder that is at the same level as that Docker file into the config sets folder of our Solr installation. So a simple one-line change there. And we'll navigate back here, open our PowerShell, kill that instance of Solr, remove the container, and for the sake of not typing, I'm going to just navigate to the previous command. Okay, we've built the container, and I'm going to run it with the exact same command that I used earlier. And as soon as it's up, we'll go refresh that admin panel and see what we've got. There we go. It's up. We'll let that spin up and see what we've got in here. And there's our course. It's all the basic cores you'll need for a Sitecore index. So now that you see we've got the newly imported cores showing up in the admin panel, at this point we could point an instance of Sitecore to it and have it as our Solr index. Now, during the course of this episode, we created a Docker file, installed Java, set up Solr, and added some cores. In the next video, though, we'll be building a Docker container for MongoDB. So feel free to click like and subscribe if you'd like to continue following this project. This is Devin Edelamaki saying see you next time.